Hello, everyone. This is Latinxs, CEO and co-founder at Lab4U. And today I'm extremely happy because I've got one of our favorite educator in Lab4U in this Zoom call for this podcast at Lab4U Talks. I've got with me Mrs. Marta Vargas Styer from Sacramento, Cristo Rey Sacramento High School. Thank you so much for joining our podcast today.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I actually personally met Mrs. Styer a few weeks ago, a month ago. We were socially distant. We took some pictures, and it was a beautiful moment to connect with someone we've been working with for the past couple of months at Lab4U. And before we dig deeper into what Mrs. Styer is doing with the students, I just want to briefly tell you about Mrs. Styer, Mrs. Marta Vargas Styer. I'm very proud of that Latin American surname as well. Mrs. Marta Vargas Styer. She is from California State University. She's an engineer. She's got a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineer and a Master of Science in Biomedical Engineering. A brilliant engineer. And today, she teaches at Cristo Rey High School physics. So as an engineer, please tell us a little bit about your experience being an engineer for so many years at Caltrans.
So interesting you asked, because last weekend there was a career fair, when they have students come talk to professionals. Yes. So I happened to give the talk, and I had to think about how would I summarize 30 years of being an electrical engineer at Caltrans. So I picked some of my most favorite projects that I did there. And so the most recent project that I actually had the pleasure of working with some brilliant engineers had to do with a detector that can tell the difference between a bicycle and a car. Why do you care? Well, as you know, at a traffic signal, you can have one section, the main street always green and the side street is always red until a car is there, until there's a demand placed on the intersection. Well, a law passed in California that said you had to detect bicycles. So we modified the loop detector in the pavement. It's called a type D loop that can detect bicycles, but it can't tell the difference between a bike and a car. This was a problem. They did research at UC Berkeley, decide how long it took for a bicyclist to go, oh, it's green, and then get started and then make it across the intersection. It's a lot longer than for a car. So the red, green, and yellow is a lot longer. And this was a real problem. So we came to a conclusion that there was a radar detector. And so we did a research study. So I led the research study on a radar detector, distinguish between the two. So you only gave the additional green time if and only if it was required for a bicyclist. So we used it at Chico State University. We did a bunch of data collection there, then in West Sacramento. And then finally, we installed it in Huntington Beach, right along the ocean, where bicyclists were used to just blowing off a red light because the detectors wouldn't catch them. So we had to come up with a sign that says, bicyclists, wait for signal. And anyway, that was really a fun thing that took the last couple of years. That was really fun. Wow. That was very gratifying. Yeah, the bicyclist community really appreciated it. They invited me to several of their conferences in California. And so that was really fun. But the other really fun one that was earlier, and maybe halfway through my career, was with fiber optics. So in Southern California, predominantly, they have over 500 miles of fiber optic cable underneath the freeway, underneath the shoulder, because of the cameras, closed circuit TV monitors to be able to surveillance, right? Or verification of incidents and so on. So this was a huge issue of how to install it because there wasn't any guidelines. So I actually published the fiber optic design guidelines. And the Federal Highway Administration, the US DOT, got wind of it. They found out that I had developed a class. That should have been a clue that I was really into being a teacher, because I took this class on the show on the road to various Southern California districts, because California is divided in different offices called districts. And so then they invited me to teach the class for the Nevada DOT. And that was fun. And then they liked my class so much, it was a 2-day class, that they invited me to teach it for the Hawaii DOT. And I had never been there. So my husband and I got to go. We stayed for a week, all paid for by the United States Department of Transportation. So there are just a lot of fun projects that I got involved in that were something new that we had to do to solve a problem.
Wow. And I mean, you've been in California. I see you've been in Fremont, in in Sacramento. You've worked as an engineer almost your entire professional career, solving all these problems, right? Very much into STEM. And I can see here that General Electric medical system, when you were with the NMRI instruments. So you worked as an engineer solving problems in California, in the United States. But now, and in the past couple of years, today, at Cristo Rey High School, you're teaching physics and inspiring future engineers. I want to understand how this, amazing engineer went from, solving problems in engineering at Caltrans and other organizations to being a physics teacher. What inspired you to make this jump into, engineering to helping future engineers?
So I think the bottom line is I would have to say I call it a God thing, because I started volunteering for Cristo Rey about 8 years before I retired. But I was a math volunteer. So I was tutoring pre-calculus, algebra 2. And so I thought, and the way I phrased it, I thought that someday when I grow up, I'll be a math teacher. And with math, then you can get him into sciences. So that's what I thought I was going to do. And so I was getting closer to retirement. I actually tutored once a week. All school year. I'd sneak out of work early. Yeah, I worked so many long hours. I didn't feel bad doing that during the school year. And then what happened was I retired. I took a test. It's called a CBEST, California Basic, whatever, education test. Take that test. And then I could be a long-term substitute. And so what happened was I ended up being a sub for 2 weeks in physics. So I had to do some reviewing of physics, thanks to Khan Academy. I used them to review some things. And I came home and I told my husband, oh my gosh, I know what I want to be when I grow up. This is too much fun. So then I thought, you still have to use math. Right. But with physics, now we're doing fun things, fun demonstrations. So always trying to wow them and make them really impressed and have fun with it. So it's really a math class. It's applicable math, right? Applications using math skills, right? So that's how that fell in. And I thought this is too much fun.
Right. And why, sorry, I do want to dig a bit deeper into your passion. Why do you say I seek to inspire future engineers? Like, what in your engineering experience, like today, what are you doing as a physics teacher? And we'll dig deeper later on the labs. But today, why do you want to inspire future engineers? Why do you want the students to enter into engineering?
Well, one main reason is, unfortunately, enrollment of female engineering students has been dropping. There were more when I was in college, and there weren't very many. I think the ratio was 7 to 8 to 1, which is kind of fun for a single young woman, right? But now it's much worse. So that's a problem. And so then I thought, well, wouldn't it be neat? And again, I think it's a God thing, because I really thought I was going to be teaching math. Wouldn't it be interesting to be able to just use my engineering background experience? And I have. It's really easy with each chapter for me to give an example of a real life problem that is being solved. Either I had to do it or my colleagues had to do it, using these principles to say, you guys, this is real. Everything, they hear that a lot. This is real. Really using that. So that's one of the things, is to see if I can, and initially it was to see if I can engage more female students into engineering. Then being at Cristo Rey, I realized there's not a whole lot of Latinos either. So then I told them, we need Latinos. And in that email that I was telling you about, an email I got, he even said, you're right, Ms. Styer, I'm excited to be a Latino now in engineering. One of my former students had sent me an email just 2 days ago. So again, it reminded me that I must have
what did the student, can you tell us a little bit, what did the student write to you?
So 2 days ago, I got a wonderful, beautiful email from a student from my very first year there. And in the email, he's now a sophomore. And they know that they've been hearing me tell him, when you're a sophomore, that's usually when you take college physics. So my goal was always, I told him, it's for you to feel prepared and know you're going to pass physics, because it is a weed out class. I don't know if all universities, it certainly was at Purdue for me, but I'm guessing most universities, it's a weed out class. So I told them there's plenty of smart students that don't pass. And it's not because they weren't smart, it's because they weren't prepared. They hadn't heard the concepts before. They hadn't heard any of the know how to use their calculator in certain ways that they didn't have to do in math and so on. So I told them, that's my goal, is for you to be able to feel prepared and say, oh, I sort of remember this. Oh, we did something like this, to feel prepared. So in the email, he actually said to me, thank you. I feel so well prepared. what I learned from you really made a difference. I know it came at a good time too. I really needed to hear that. That's really beautiful. So that just inspires me even more, to get it to be exciting and fun for them. Because I tried to do like a demonstration, if not once a week, every 2 weeks, where they'd come in and they see something up, jerry rigged up on the wall. What's that? And then I'd show them the demonstration to prove the point of whatever concept we were trying to do. Case in point, maybe you're familiar with the hunter and the monkey. The hunter and the monkey. It's a famous experiment. If you Google hunter and the monkey. So I showed them the video, and it must be in a college classroom because it's a huge ceiling. They have this really tall ladder, and at the top they have a stuffed animal monkey, and then they have a gun, like a metal ball. So the question is, if I drop the monkey at a certain time and I'm going to shoot the gun at the exact same time, should I point it at the monkey, slightly above it, or slightly below it? Because we were discussing two-dimensional motion. So I showed them the video, and then I showed them what I had rigged up in the classroom, and just to hear the excitement. But first they walk in going, what's that? Because, there's a cable up there, it's connected to the ceiling. And then the gun, I have a student come and they have to pull the trigger to let the ball go at the same time. Oh, it was awesome to see their faces go. And that was my goal, always trying to make them have fun with why this is so important. Another fun example I did in the classroom was a two-dimensional motion. So they had to decide where the little ceramic box I had on the floor, I bought at the Dollar Tree, and they knew from the equipment I had said exactly the initial velocity. What velocity was that bullet leaving it? Not a bullet, it was a big metal ball leaving. And so from that initial velocity, they could figure out the distance of where it was going to land on the floor. Well, when they finally calculated it correctly, it was a cheap ceramic that it shattered the ceramic, and they went, and they looked at me to see if I was going to be mad. And I went, yes. And they felt better. They got it right. Anyway, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say, so
I love listening. I can tell, and I'm sure our listeners also can tell, that you are a very practical, hands-on physics teacher. You're not the kind of physics teacher that's full of theory and, just learn these formulas by heart, but you're very practical, that you have the demonstration and you want your students to get their hands dirty. Tell me, why is that important to you? Why is that practice important to you?
Well, I sort of found it out by accident the first year, the first semester. The very first demonstration I gave to them, there was a motion sensor in the front of the room. And I didn't realize that these seniors in high school didn't really understand how to read a graph. So the sensor motion was in the front of the room. I had a student come right up to the front of the room. He was all proud to be the one doing it. And they could see projected on the screen position versus time. So he walked back slowly. I said, try to keep the same speed. And they saw the graph move from the lower left-hand corner up to the right and perfectly diagonal. Then I had him stop. So then the graph went straight. Then I had him come back, and then it went back down. And to see their eyes go, like they get it now. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, you need to be able to experience it as it's happening. Then they can read a graph. So last summer, when I was panicking, how am I going to teach physics distance? I have to find a lab. And so I was Googling motion man physics, moving to position versus time lab. I was just trying everything. And it took me hours before I stumbled upon Lab4U. And I got so excited with that lab. And that's how I discovered the other labs, because, we ended up doing a total of 10 formal labs using Lab4Physics. And then there was, I think, 3 extra credit labs, which many of them did. And so just this last night, I finished grading their first simulation lab. Notice the face, simulation. But I don't feel so bad because it was their first one. So their last lab this year is going to be with electronics.
Okay. So, the pandemic hit us hard, especially when it comes to, doing labs at school, university. Teachers are struggling, physics teachers and science teachers in general have been struggling on how to do labs during the pandemic. So tell me again, because we connected last year. I didn't know that whole story about how you found us. Now
summer. Over the summertime.
Yeah. I just remember we got I think it was one of my colleagues, Nathan, that got one of your emails, and then we connected. And since the first call we had, it was just always so inspiring to listen to you. And we said, no, we have to work with you, definitely. So how many lab for physics labs have you done with your students?
10.
Oh wow,
We
during the
had
pandemic.
yes, during the time pandemic. So I want to say we did, I don't remember if it was 5 or 6 last semester, or 6 and then 4 this semester, because the semester we still have almost a whole quarter to go now.
Yeah.
Right.
And how was the students, like, how did you see the students? I remember you sending me some pictures. Can you tell us an anecdote about one of the labs?
Sure. So one of the things that I kind of stumbled upon was, I learned this at the end of last year. End of last year, I didn't feel bad because they had done all their labs in the classroom. So we had to switch to, and I did 2 virtual labs. But what I did was I obligated them, requirement for them to include a selfie of them doing the lab. And really, the reason
I like
was
that.
to
I like
encourage
that.
them.
Yeah.
Well, I did this to encourage them to do the lab, because you get to
Right.
share documents and so on, right? Had to show them doing it. So I continued that. I wanted them to show me screenshots. So they had to, take a picture of whatever we're doing, whether there's velocity, acceleration, screenshots, but it had to be a picture of them. So I said, it has to be a selfie, or you have someone in your family taking a picture of it. So what I ended up doing, we're making these collages. So all their pictures, because they were just so inspiring to me, their excitement of them. Sometimes you could see their little brother holding the little toy car, or something with them next to it. Is so cute, bringing the whole family in. But what I discovered is, in doing that collage, I would share with them. I'd post it on Google Classroom. Here you are. So they could see each other. They're seniors. They've been in school together for 3 years, and they could see each other. So that was really exciting. Particularly in the very beginning, the extra credit ones. But the most recent one, the last one they did, was music. We were doing sound waves. And so I took a lab that I adapted that we did in the classroom. And the fact that you have a frequency spectrum analyzer as part of the app is, to me, still mind blowing. I keep telling them, this is $10,000, a little box, and it's just one little piece on there, right? So I was surprised at how many of them have a musical instrument. A recorder, a violin, guitar, piano, keyboard. And for those people who absolutely did not, I provided links to 3 different instruments with the keys or how to do it.
Right.
Well, imagine this. One of the students actually emailed me saying, Ms. Styer, I don't remember. Can you tell me where the notes are in a violin? Okay. Well, what do? I just Googled it. I found a great table, a great link. And so I sent that to her, and she was so grateful. She sent me an email thanking me so much. But it was so exciting for them to find where those notes were, let alone to find the correlation of what happens in an octave for the actual speech spectrum. The frequency, the first note and the last note.
And
so that was,
and the notes and the frequency, like just comparing it with the different instruments, right?
Right. So that collage was very special. And then I finally started doing this. I wish I'd done this earlier, but the last few, some of their words in their lab, because in the Lab4U is, what did you learn? How'd you feel? And the one that said, gosh, I'm actually collecting real data and I'm analyzing my own data. This is just so awesome. Or however they said it. And so then I didn't want to have to ask them permission. So I didn't put their name. I just put their quote in that collage.
Nice.
They could see, oh, I'm the one that wrote that kind of thing. So that was really, really fun, really gratifying.
I love how you express it. I've enjoyed all the collages with the pictures that you've sent, because I can actually see how you're making physics fun, fascinating, and inspiring in your own words. Your students, you're taking all these real life examples and you're sharing it with the students and making it fun. I really wish all of us have teachers and educators like you that are inspiring students. I'm curious to know now, during the pandemic and in the past couple of months, how have you been engaging with your students, like these labs, like homework? How are you? Is it like you connect over Zoom? Like how are you doing it? Can you if we can help other educators take this example and replicate it?
Absolutely. I'll say a caveat though. I made a promise to my students at the beginning of the year in August that I said, you know what, pandemic or no, my goal is to give you the same quality of honors physics that the previous 2 years get. So we're going to figure this out. We're not going to let this pandemic get to us. But I will also say that I admit to them many times, I say, you guys, unlike some of your teachers, I don't have little kids at home anymore. I'm done with that. So I have met with students at 5 p.m., at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. I even met with one student so far on a Sunday night because I could. I wanted them to feel like, remember how you used to come into my classroom previously right after lunch, because my class is right after lunch. So they could come and get homework, help on their homework, or they come after school. So I started doing that on the Zoom. The way they do it is I meet with them twice a week. They call that synchronous classes. And then the other twice a week are asynchronous classes where they have homework. And who knew a year ago, if you had told me that I would have my own YouTube channel, because I've made so many videos. And I want to explain that because what I decided to do was the way my format of my class was in the beginning was, did anybody have any question on the homework that's due today? And we'll go through that. Then it would be lecture, material, theory, and so on, which might include the demonstration and so on. And then the last maybe 15-ish minutes would be homework problems to prepare you for tonight's homework. In the back of the chapter, they'd have preparation problems. So I would do that every day. So what I did this time, instead, since I only met with them twice a week, was I only did the lecture, material, demonstrations through Zoom and so on. And all those homework preparation video is on videos. It's on YouTube, my YouTube channel. So what I've noticed is that they tell you how many views. So it seems that half of my students read the book examples and figure it out. And they don't watch my video, which is fine. I wasn't that kind of student. I was the kind of student, just show me, give me an example, show me how to do it. That's the kind of student I was. So those kind of students are watching my videos, maybe more than once, to see how to solve those problems. And then they feel prepared to do the actual homework problems. So that's how I've been doing it. And they call office hours, you know? And so I'm supposed to have asynchronous day office hours. Yeah, they know 5-6 days a week. Just ask Miss Styer. They know she'll meet with you because that's the most fun part. I think I told them, I'm like, thank you so much, Miss Styer. I'm like, yeah, thank you. This is the most fun part. And I hang up like, oh my God, that was so much fun. That's like working with the student one-on-one,
right?
You know, showing them that you believe in them and helping them and getting excited when they make a mistake. I'm so glad that was a great mistake. Let me tell you why. And then they told them, this is the time to make the mistakes. It's not a time to make it during the test, but certainly for homework, because there's so many homeworks. I actually grade their homework every single day.
Oh, wow.
And I know that's probably not, I'm guessing, not sustainable if I taught a full-time load, which I don't. So I can. So I do. And they benefit from that because that's where we really learn for the next homework. Or if they want to say, I still don't get this problem. And, you know, I saw your comments. Can we go through this? So
right. Like, you know, in when you're running your experiments, you make mistakes, right? And you do it again. And that's just part of the process. Even with inquiry, you just ask questions.
Right.
And you go through that process of, you know, experimenting.
Right. Case in point, the second to last penultimate lab was the Hooke's Law.
Yes.
So I got on Amazon a box full of, I don't know how many springs, $10, you know, and I mailed 18. That's how many are in my honors now. Some of them had to go to a different class. I mailed them to their home, and they're little itty bitty springs. It was good for them. Well, so I met with one of the students about it last week, and she said, "Oh, Miss Sarah, I kind of got it caught onto something, and it won't come back. Won't string back." I go, "Oh, that's great. There's a graph. What's it called?" And I couldn't remember the name. I said, "Okay, it's straight. Okay, the newtons and the distance. But then you reach a point, and then it doesn't continue linear anymore. What is that point? You need to write that in your lab." And I said, "Wait a minute. Did you get good data?" "Oh yeah, I did. This was afterwards." I go, "Oh, excellent." So then I Googled it. I found it. It was the limit of elasticity. Depends on which, right? And I showed it to her. I go, "This is brilliant. You now learn." So I was getting all excited because she messed up. You know, it doesn't have the same. I said, "You've changed the spring constant now." So that was one way to learn, right?
Absolutely.
They were cheap springs. I didn't have to worry about it. I didn't want them back anyway. I didn't tell them that.
I love it. Just for our listeners, Mrs. Styer is talking about an experiment we have at Lab4Physics called Hook On, which is Hooke's Law, where we are analyzing the constant of the spring. So this is elastic force experiment available on Lab4Physics. That is fun. Did the students take pictures of that experiment as well?
I haven't received her lab report. Hers is coming, but she has
Yeah.
to because there's an
Right.
actual full 10 points out of 100
Oh,
for the
wow.
photo. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
This is not,
wow.
that's a
Wow.
whole letter
The
grade.
evidence, the evidence of the
Exactly,
experience.
of you doing the lab. And by the way, another anecdote that the same student did, when we were doing the lab for two-dimensional motion, we had to roll the ball off the countertop and you had to take the picture
Yes.
and you're cutting. Well, when I did it here in the kitchen, I had my husband hold the phone while I was rolling the ball. So I
Right.
can't do it. Well, apparently she didn't have anybody to help her. And she ingeniously figured out a way using her headphones, having the phone in a certain spot and how to press the button on her headphones to make the. So I gave her an award. I gave her a little trophy. It was on paper that I projected to Zoom with her name on it. So it was just amazing how these students had to come up with not all the labs that you have to be far away for at the same time as, but yeah, no. So, and they had fun with it. I could tell they were enjoying it besides learning some physics, right?
Right. Absolutely. I love it. Just having fun while you're learning physics. So just to explain our listeners this example. So in Lab4 Physics, there are some experiments where normally pre-pandemic we would do in groups, groups of students, right? 2 or 3, 3 students. So one student, for example, is sliding down, a toy car, or is working with a marble, or whatever the experimental setup is, and the other student is probably in a defined distance, measuring the distance, either recording or taking the accelerometer data or sonometer data, or recording the movement of a trajectory with the camera. But here at home, many students are by themselves, not necessarily with their siblings or parents at home. So while doing the experiment, that extra hand, if you want to record and take a picture while you're doing the experiment with your smartphone as a measuring tool, in some cases could have been challenging. But this student, she figured it out. She connected her headphones, she ran the experiment, she took the pictures, she recorded. I mean, what a creative process in that, which is fantastic. I don't know if I re-explained that well, yes, Mrs. Styer.
That was good.
Great, because some of our listeners are going to be listening on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and others are going to look at us, on YouTube. So those are different experiences, and I wanted to share with our listeners this. Mrs. Styer, I remember you once sent me the answers of some labs of your students. So they were explaining what they learned. I think it was the metacognition exercises at the end. What has been, what answer do you remember the most? What has called your attention with those answers of the students that are replying to the lab work or the lab report?
Well, the one that comes to my mind first was back in August, and it was an introductory. They had to play, I think it's called play physics, but they had to write a paragraph for me on what they saw and what they did. That was it. And he wrote, "I am so excited for what there is to come." In other words, I could tell he had fun because he actually wrote that he's so excited. And he's continued that way. A very, very hardworking student. So it's been really exciting.
I love it. I love it. If you had a magic wand, chun chun chun, like Harry Potter style magic wand. If you had a magic wand, what would you want for your students?
Oh, it's interesting you tell me that, because right now we're in training all week, because next week we're starting to go back to the classroom. So I'm going to have 11 students in the classroom and 8 via Zoom.
The hybrid.
So that's going to be right. That's going to be really challenging. Yeah,
it's going to be a challenge.
And so I'm actually trying to think of how I can sneak a multimeter to everyone in the room, but the ones in Zoom won't know about it. I'm trying to figure out, because I want them to touch a multimeter and be able to take the leads and say, "Oh, I figured out the resistance of this resistor." I tell them that when you have kids someday, you want to know, are the batteries not working in their child's toy or something? So I'm still trying to figure out how I could, because we're not supposed to touch anything, and that's the tough part.
What about? I'm just thinking out loud. I probably will ask Professor Javier at our team if he has any ideas there. Maybe if you pair them in groups, I'm just thinking out loud, pair them in groups, like the one who's on Zoom, maybe from their phone or WhatsApp or something, and the one who is in the class with a multimeter, and they can discuss together. I don't know if that would be possible. I'm not sure.
Like
I'm not sure. I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking out loud because I've seen other examples where students are connecting in doing this group work in so maybe one
I like that idea.
one time, so they are with the multimeter, one is walking and analyzing the data, because one thing is using the instrument, right? Measuring whether it is the built-in sensors that we have in smartphones with Lab4Physics, and the other thing is analyzing the data, right? So there are learning objectives for each step of this inquiry process, right? So maybe I'm just thinking out loud.
I like that idea because they can take their laptop and kind of push down
exactly
parts of the cameras right on their table.
Exactly.
So they can show their lab partner, here's the leads, here's where I'm touching it. So at least the other person can see it up close.
Right.
Think about that one some more.
Right. We can think about it. We can definitely circle back about it. Your thoughts on distance learning and listening to you is so inspiring. I want to share with other educators, because Mrs. Martha Vargas Styer has made it possible. I say it proudly, right? As a Latina in science and in STEM. I want to share with the rest of our audience and our listeners that you have made it possible during a pandemic to inspire students to experiment at home, right?
So I will tell you this. I told my kids, no hay mal que por bien no venga, which basically means there's nothing bad that happens and some good won't come of it. And so one of the things that I've discovered with the labs is I noticed last year and the year before that in the little lab groups, which because of the equipment, I had 5, sometimes 6 people in a group. It was just like at my professional job. Some people were doing all the work and some people were just sitting back watching and letting the other people do the work. Well, they couldn't do that this year. They were on their own. So I believe that, I don't know which one of those students would have been the workers and which ones wouldn't, but I have to believe that the maturity, the discipline that was developed because they had to depend on themselves. One student said to me just recently in his lab, I really like doing this better with lab groups. Everybody does, I told him, but isn't it wonderful that you've done such a good job? Because he's still an A student anyway. It just required a little more work because you had to do this measuring and set it up and take the picture and analyze the data.
Right.
So I think that's just that much stronger for college, where same thing's going to happen. They're going to have some group dynamics where you have some people that just don't do as much work as others, right? Doesn't matter. You're going to do it because you need to do a good job because you want to do a good job, right? So I believe that this year, these particular students, I told them, this is a gift. Take this as a gift because it's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. You need to be proud of yourselves. And so on the Zoom, I could see someone going like this because I told them, give yourselves a pat on the back, right? So that, and I think that's big because that is applicable to any subject, whether you have to write a term paper, an essay, or I have to get you this lab. I need to focus and I need to have the discipline to get it done. And that's what they had to do. So I think that's a huge growth opportunity that's only because of this pandemic.
Right. Oh my goodness, I can talk hours and hours with you and listen to all your stories, your anecdotes with your students, the ones who send you emails now that they're sophomores and taking physics, or your students that are doing labs at home with Lab4Physics, or the students that are going in person and we're thinking about this hybrid model. I've learned so much from you and your experience. I've been inspired by you and your students, and I want to give a big shout out to all your students. We can share this podcast to them. All the students, all the Mrs. Styer students, a big congratulations to you. I think you've been doing fantastic during this pandemic. I truly hope, just with Mrs. Styer, that you choose. If you don't choose, it's okay. But if you choose a STEM related career, we'll be very, very happy. And I am sure that this was an experience for you to grow. make mistakes, continue improving, and just, keep asking questions and keep seeing the world around yourself, and experimenting. Keep experimenting. Dear audience, and Mrs. Styer, thank you so much. I am a big fan of you, and I'll continue to be a big fan of you.
Me as well.
Thank you so much for inspiring all of us at Lab4U and all of your students. Do you have a message for your students or for other educators as we come to the conclusion of this episode?
Make it fun. Make it fun. And homework is so important. That's where they get to practice those concepts. Just because you think you understand it doesn't say anything until you actually do the problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for the work you do, for being such an inspiring physics teacher, such an inspiring engineer. Thank you for inspiring the future engineers and scientists of this world. Thank you so much for inspiring the Latinos in science and engineering in California. And now the rest of the world is going to listen to your story and your student story. Thank you so much. And keep experimenting.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
On the contrary, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much. And talk to you and see you in the next episode of Lab4U Talks.
Thanks.